Cheers, cheers, sweetie. Such an exciting day, isn't it? It is. Can't believe our little girl is getting married. Oh, I hope I looked at something stressful being the one to walk our daughter down the aisle, you know? I thought I was doing that. I nursed our daughter, I raised our daughter, I was there with our daughter every day. Why wouldn't I be the one? That's because I enabled you to. I'm the provider. Okay, when she had her car broken for the first time, who do you think she came running to? Because you were home, I was off working my ass off. This day, this beautiful wedding. What about the dress you're wearing? It makes sense that you're the one that picked him out. You've never been one for fashion. This dress is so hideous. Then why don't you just... Hey, you look awful in it anyway!
Holy matrimony. Mothers of the Bride presents what initially appears to be a heightened domestic disagreement, and slowly reveals itself as a layered, emotionally resonant meditation on lesbian partnership, parental identity, and the often invisible labor women perform both within their families and within their romantic relationships, using the familiar cultural ritual of a wedding as a site where long-suppressed feelings rise to the surface. Silvia and Serene, a married couple preparing for their daughter's wedding, are framed from the outset not as caricatures or comedic foils, but as women deeply invested in their family, their shared history, and their roles as parents, who have navigated both love and marginalization together. The opening moments, in which they exchange affectionate compliments while making final preparations, establish a tone of intimacy and mutual respect that many lesbian viewers will recognize as hard-won, especially for women who have built families in social contexts that did not always validate their legitimacy. The conflict over who will walk their daughter down the aisle, while seemingly trivial on its surface, quickly becomes a symbolic struggle over recognition, visibility, and emotional contribution, echoing broader questions queer parents often face about whose labor is seen, whose sacrifices are remembered, and whose role is publicly acknowledged. This disagreement is not merely about ceremony but about legacy, about who gets to be named as central in a story that has required both women to fight for their place within it. And the film's strength lies in how it treats this tension with seriousness rather than mockery. As Silvia and Serene insist, each with growing intensity, that it was an unspoken understanding that she would be the one to give their daughter away, the narrative exposes how silence can function both as intimacy and as erasure, particularly within long-term relationships where assumptions accumulate without ever being fully articulated. Their argument escalates into a heated confrontation not because of ego alone, but because each woman is grappling with the fear that her love, labor, and presence might be minimized at the very moment when their family is most publicly visible. This fear resonates strongly with lesbian and queer women who have often had to negotiate legitimacy not only with the outside world, but within institutions, traditions, and rituals that were not designed with them in mind, including weddings that historically centered heterosexual norms and gendered roles. The scene's intensity is rooted in emotional history rather than spectacle, and even as the argument becomes chaotic, it remains grounded in the characters' interior lives, revealing how easily devotion can transform into defensiveness when recognition feels threatened. The jealousy that consumes Silvia and Serene is not framed as petty or irrational, but as the product of years spent proving themselves as parents, partners, and women whose family deserves respect, and the film carefully avoids suggesting that their conflict undermines their love. Instead, it illustrates how deeply intertwined love and rivalry can become when two women share not only a relationship, but a life shaped by shared struggles, compromises, and triumphs. As their confrontation reaches its peak, the narrative pivots in a way that underscores one of the film's central themes, that emotional intensity between women is often misread, minimized, or sensationalized by a culture uncomfortable with the depth of women's bonds. Rather than resolving their conflict through dominance or victory, Silvia and Serene are overtaken by a surge of recognition, a moment in which anger collapses into awareness of how much they still matter to one another, and how closely their sense of self is tied to their partner's gaze. This shift is handled with restraint and care, emphasizing not physicality but emotional release, as the women rediscover connection through proximity, memory, and mutual acknowledgement. For lesbian viewers, this moment may recall the complicated ways intimacy can resurface during conflict, especially in long-term relationships where passion is sustained not by novelty but by shared history and resilience. The film treats this reconnection not as regression or indulgence, but as a reminder that desire between women often exists alongside frustration, exhaustion, and fear, and that acknowledging it can be an act of honesty rather than disruption. Importantly, the scene resists framing this moment as transgressive or inappropriate, instead presenting it as a natural extension of a relationship built on deep emotional attunement, thereby challenging cultural narratives that either desexualize older women or treat lesbian intimacy as something that must be either hidden or exaggerated. Beyond its relevance to queer audiences, the scene speaks to women more broadly about the pressures of emotional labor, particularly within family structures, where women are expected to be endlessly giving, adaptable, and self-effacing. Silvia and Serene's argument reveals how easily women's contributions can be turned into competition when recognition is scarce, and how societal expectations often pit women against each other even within loving partnerships. Their struggle over who was more involved in their daughter's upbringing mirrors the way women are frequently encouraged to measure their worth through sacrifice, productivity, and visibility, rather than through mutual care or shared effort. By dramatizing this conflict within a same-gender marriage, the film exposes how these pressures are not inherent to heterosexual dynamics, but are woven into broader cultural scripts about motherhood, value, and success. The narrative also invites reflection on how women are taught to suppress vulnerability in favor of competence, leading to moments where unspoken hurt erupts in ways that feel disproportionate but are rooted in long-standing patterns of self-silencing. In this sense, Holy Matrimony, Mothers of the Bride functions as both a queer story and a feminist critique, using the specificity of Silvia and Serene's relationship to illuminate universal truths about how women navigate love, responsibility, and self-recognition. The film's refusal to simplify their conflict or assign blame underscores its commitment to portraying women's relationships as ethically complex and emotionally rich, resisting the tendency to flatten lesbian partnerships into either idealized harmony or chaotic dysfunction. Instead, it insists on nuance, showing how tenderness and rivalry can coexist, and how love does not eliminate the need for ongoing communication and negotiation. This approach challenges persistent societal discomfort with women expressing intense feelings for one another, whether those feelings take the form of devotion, jealousy, or longing, a discomfort that often leads to either trivialization or moral panic. By grounding its portrayal in emotional reality rather than sensational framing, the film pushes back against cultural tendencies to either erase lesbian intimacy by treating it as invisible, or to sensationalize it by stripping it of seriousness and dignity. Silvia and Serene's story also resonates within a broader historical context, recalling generations of lesbian couples who built families without legal recognition, social support, or cultural scripts to guide them, and who often had to fight for their roles as parents to be acknowledged at all. The question of who walks their daughter down the aisle becomes, in this light, a powerful symbol of how far they have come and how fragile recognition can still feel, even at moments of celebration. The film honors this history by allowing both women to be flawed, passionate, and deeply committed, refusing to reduce them to archetypes or lessons. Symbolically, Silvia and Serene represent different but equally valid expressions of maternal and relational identity, and their interaction mirrors real-life dynamics within queer communities where power, recognition, and emotional labor must be continually renegotiated. Their relationship also speaks to the concept of chosen family, a cornerstone of LGBTQ+ experience, illustrating how family bonds are maintained not through rigid roles but through ongoing acts of care, repair, and affirmation. Throughout the scene, the tone remains reflective and grounded, inviting viewers to see themselves in the characters' fears and hopes, rather than positioning them as objects of judgment or spectacle. As a cultural text, Holy Matrimony, Mothers of the Bride contributes meaningfully to conversations about visibility and emotional truth, asserting that women's love for women, whether expressed through partnership, parenting, or shared history, deserves to be taken seriously and treated with respect. It affirms that lesbian relationships are not defined by novelty or transgression, but by the same challenges and rewards that shape all enduring love, including the courage to confront conflict, the humility to acknowledge hurt, and the resilience to reconnect. In celebrating Silvia and Serene's journey, the film ultimately underscores a central truth, that women-centered relationships, in all their complexity, offer profound insights into care, identity, and the ongoing process of becoming visible to oneself and to others, in a world that still struggles to fully recognize the depth and legitimacy of women's love for one another.